Welcome, gentle listener. I am Voldemort, your faithful servant. Today, we finally deal with one of the most important factions in the entire Grimdark. One that holds immutable one of the rarest qualities, the purest, in all of the setting. For in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. Hence valor, strength, power, and commitment are in plentiful supply. Make no mistake, they are not rare. But there is one thing that is. Often it is mistaken, being the fear of the masses to their masters, but in its purest form, it is rare. For the word is not zealotry, faith, power, defiance, or ability. The word is loyalty. And so, for your amusement and fascination, I now, with friends, present to you an in-depth look at those mighty sons of a mightier sire. Of course, I speak of Rogel Dawn, the mastermind of the Last Wall, and his sons, the Emperor's cold wrath made manifest, his imperial fists. The Polka Aurora system was named after its primary world, Polka Aurora, in the language of the Administratum, High Gothic. In the common parlance of the people, Low Gothic, it meant beautiful dawn. And it was once a truly halcyon world. It was, before that terrible time known as the Horus Heresy. Despite it being over 10,000 years since those dark days, the world would never be the same. It had been rich and verdant, producing foods and mineral resources for light years around. During the heresy, strict mining began, for the resources of Polka Aurora were rare in the extreme and were desperately needed by the Loyalists for their war efforts. Tens of thousands of men and women died under the constant pace and lack of safety practices. The resources were needed immediately. But when the war was over, and the great adversary, Horus Lupercal, was finally defeated, the Imperium was on its knees. So they did not stop their strip mining practices. They did not show restraint. And Aurora Pulchra was transformed into a barren, lifeless place. So congested was the very air, filled with the particles resultant from the blasting and strip mining of the world. It took nearly 300 years of constant abuse of the planet for it to be finally drained of the last of its mineral resources. And almost overnight, the heavy loaders and ore extractors fell silent. The roaring fires of smelting and processing, the crisscrossing of haulers across the upper atmosphere, the constant flow of resources into the world to maintain its efficiency, all of it ended. And the Imperium simply upped sticks and left the populace of the world bereft of purpose, bereft of resources, bereft of any way to maintain their entire society. So reliant on the payment for their rare minerals were they. And Polka Aurora dwindled overnight. The catastrophic impact on its fabric was too much. Food and water became prized beyond compare, and civil order broke down practically overnight. For hundreds of years the world went into a state of semi-rebellion as one revolution after another made the gutters run with blood. But the Administratum did not care. Polka Aurora was drained of any of its use, so it was simply ignored. Unlike so many other worlds, it regressed again and again, as the constant conflict debased the world and its scant remaining inhabitants. But that was a long time ago. Over the subsequent ages of the Imperium, slowly but surely, Polka Aurora recovered its natural beauty. Its habitat began to resurge. It began to breathe again. And in that new beautiful dawn, the populace began to thrive again, began to hope again. They scrimped and saved, harvesting and trading the best of their wares, and slowly gained funds to procure plants, then wildlife from other worlds. And as the entire community pulled together, they rebuilt their world anew. Forests grew, and the tide turned. Crops began to sprout, and the skies and seas were once more filled with living things. And over the next 10,000 years or more, Polka Aurora began to regain the interest of the Administratum and the greater Imperium again. The mineral resources of the world were long gone, but there was something that could be gained from the world again. It had value in its people. Its raw resource was a very compliant, hardy and energetic people, fitter and more easily applied than most in the region. The Administratum took their planetary ties in head count. Some attempt had been made to raise regiments due to the hardness of the people, but this was soon declared a failed experiment. Despite the early periods of civil war after the Imperium pulled out, the people of this world were not martial at all. Sturdy survivors, yes. Warriors, no. But they were workers par excellence. No shift too long, no task too arduous. They practically shone when given a task they could perform as a community, as a team. For the people of Polka Aurora never once blamed the Imperium for its circumstances. They saw it as a test from the Emperor. Could they become more than they were? Was the ideology that had gotten them through, had made them work together to rebuild their world, instead of drenching its barren wastes in further blood, as so many other worlds had done. And the people of Beautiful Dawn were quietly proud, never smug or conceited, but they had a pride that could never be eroded, never be taken from them, even when the work they were required to do was almost insurmountable, and their friends died around them of sheer exhaustion. They seemed to pull together instead of splitting apart, and they were reasonable. They would make suggestions, never make demands. And it was the wise administrator or governor who heeded their quiet words, for it would inevitably lead to an explosion in productivity. And they were one of the quiet and unlauded groups of the Imperium that are never mentioned, never heralded, never thanked. Yet without them and people like them, there would be no Imperium. Despite never being valued, they became invaluable. But when the final moment, the moment of truth came, the Administratum looked upon the beleaguered worlds that were assailed by the forces of chaos, xenos, traitors, and scum, and they put all of the worlds in their locus of control under scales and weighed them. They could not defend them all. And so it was that when the fleet of traitor Astartes cut a swathe of destruction across the sector, it was to Polka Aurora that the very best the Imperium had to offer was sent to defend it, sent to protect its most valuable resource, its people, but also sent to end the scourge of the fallen chapter that had carved its way across the stars. And thus it was that the traitors were only weeks ahead of the arrival of the counter from the Imperium. The warband of the Bloody Sickle, worshippers of chaos undivided, arrived in high orbit, and within scant hours the majority of their forces were already assaulting the northern hemisphere across its entire front. Working from the outskirts in, they culled and killed, maimed and murdered their way from one hive to the next, little knowing that the hives were largely deserted compared to the small settlements dotted across the entirety of Polka Aurora. Its populace had largely abandoned the hives, and the world had begun to blossom again, no longer required to hide behind shields and unfeeling and uncaring steel. Their diaspora across the face of the globe was a thing of beauty to them. But the Chaos Warriors were Space Marines. They were perfectly adept at wars, battles, and victory. The warband had only recently turned to the worship of the Dark Powers, and had little experience in mass exterminations of a human populace. Thus did they take time to catch on, and it took them weeks to adapt. But adapt they did. The Dark Apostles now converted many of the hardy but simple people into cultists of the worst order. It took time, it took effort, but it was done. And as they drenched the Northern Hemisphere in blood, it was as often the makeshift weapons or even hands or shot from the north to the south. Placement was in their way. It was no hive. It was an old citadel from the days of the civil wars, mostly broken down, hardly populated, with only 12,000 souls as residents. The fishing was good in the waters nearby, or there certainly would not be that many now, for it was an isolated and windswept region, where the forests had retaken the land, and only small pathways now led to any other area. Few to the south, or vice versa, so it was even more insular, parochial, and backward than most places on the world of Polka Aurora. When their skies were filled with attack and transport vessels of the Imperium, the people huddled behind their ancient walls, knowing not if they would be saved. Of these were the forces of chaos in disguise, luring them out to then wipe them out. But as the vehicles got closer, their hue clear, their heraldry visible, it was with a mighty, celibate outpouring of relief that the people then took to the walls and entryways of their old fortress and cheered. For of all of them, of all of the forces the Emperor commands, surely, for the people of Polka Aurora, these warriors were the most blessed sight to behold. As the landers poured out their cargoes with an efficiency that bewildered the local populace, a delegation thereof approached the landing site. Already preparing their positions, the indigenous people were stopped by the huge armored warriors of the picket. Towering over them, in armor covered in yellow, the Space Marines never took off their helmets and only permitted one person to pass. Just one. Hence it was that Elderman Hammurabi trudged through the mass of moving armor, marines, landers, and equipment. With each step, he seemed to shrivel. He felt so overawed by it all. Everything was so big, so heavy, so directed, so precise. Nothing out of order, except for he. And thus he dodged out of the way of multiple heavy vehicles that had no weapons he could discern. What on earth were they doing with such industrial building equipment? A question he would pose when he got to the command center, he told himself. As he approached the center of the storm, he saw three men standing together, directing others as they approached. Also, two of them had their helmets off. For some reason, he knew that this was a sign of their rank, their status. They looked striking enough, noble enough, terrifying enough, if he was honest. Two of them were speaking when he arrived.
Take your men and deploy as outlined. You know what to do, Lieutenant Artorius. I'll see you in a few days. Don't be late when we give the signal.
Have I ever let you down?
No. Let's not make this the first time, eh?
Of course, Captain Chiros.
So he's
It'll be
Canadian.
hard to sit back and cool our heels while you're having all the action. But we'll be ready.
The
See you in a few
Canadian
days.
Space Marine.
He was later to discern that it was the captain in charge and the lieutenant of the Vanguard forces. Not that he knew what that meant. He did not need to. The Emperor had sent his warriors to protect them. And such warriors! As the lieutenant swiftly pivoted on his heel and strode off purposefully, the Elderman witnessed a large segment of the force break off. They jumped in levitating vehicles that could not be anything other than tanks and armored transports by the looks of them. Within only minutes, they were already a distant memory, disappearing into the dense foliage of the surrounding woods. They simply disappeared. The Elderman stood for a few minutes more, perplexed at the fact the leaders had simply turned from him and continued their discussions, regularly pointing to distant areas of the scenery. He was not sure if he should interrupt, but after 5 more minutes of waiting, with his palms so sweaty that they could barely keep a grip on his staff of office, one he presently desperately needed, as his knees seemed to have lost their certainty amidst these titanic men and vehicles of war. Hence the Elderman slowly processed.
Yes. Space Marines from Canada. I was wondering if you were gonna catch that. Eh? So I'm going to take a minute and say hello. Hello, Isaac. I hope you're enjoying the new content. Don't push it, Isaac. I will yeet you. I will definitely yeet you. I'm enjoying this. I hope you guys do also. I got some good feedback. Was told that this is chill and relaxing and quite enjoyable. So we will continue on this route because the other content or non-tent I had was not relaxing or fun to do. So I'm quite happy with the move I made. No eating turtles. But yes, I'm quite happy with the decision. And I'm enjoying doing these, so I hope you enjoy listening to them while I doodle and do the art thing. But anyway.
Forwards, clearing his throat theatrically to make absolutely certain that both of these warriors knew of his intention to approach. It was the hardest thing he had ever done. That 10 paces forward, to a respectful distance from the giants, as they slowly turned to him. The leader, the elderman, was sure by his stance, his bearing, his panoply of war, his directing others. He took 2 huge strides towards the elderman, closing the distance between them in an instant. The elderman visibly shrunk as the shadow of the man engulfed him entirely. He blotted out the very skies as far as the elderman could see. It was how he felt, at least. But, to his credit, the elderman then produced his most elegant and deepest bow before rising and addressing the warriors before him. "Hail, mighty sons of dawn! We prayed constantly to the Emperor for deliverance, but never, in our wildest dreams, did we think that it would be the imperial fists he would deign to send to us as our defenders."
The Emperor protects. Why are you here?
Doodle with Canadian
I live here.
Marines.
I am the elderman of this place, O mighty lord of the Emperor's own angels of death.
No! Why are you here, in front of me?
As the elderman, I have questions about the defenses, about our enemy, what we can do to help. Why your men are building and working in their full armor.
Well met, Eldermen. Our enemy are traitorous Astartes. We will be setting up concentric ring positions with rockreed and other quickly created and hardened defenses. You can help us by staying out of harm's way in the main building, both now and especially during the combat. My men fortify in their armor because we do not know where the enemy is or when they will get here.
But we have reports that state they are a week away from us.
And you are 100% on that, are you? Certain. Zero margin for error? No?
No.
You may wish to risk the lives of your... I am here to make your home defensible, then to man those defenses. We have little time, so frame all of your questions so that a yes or no answer will suffice. You have 2 minutes of my time. Ask now.
We have been asked to stay in the Grand Hall. Do we need to stay in there all this time?
Yes.
But we are willing to help. Is there nothing we can do?
No.
Oh. Would
Yeah,
our
he does
presence
have a
really
good
hamper
point.
you more than assist?
Yes.
Oh. Can we at least make some meals? For brave warriors?
No. Your time is up. If you have further questions, my lieutenant will be available for 2 minutes at this time tomorrow. Good day.
Oh.
Well,
The
somebody's
elderman then
grumpy.
turned and began his trudge back to the waiting city. If he was honest, although the person imparting the answers terrified him more than even the threat of the invaders, he was relieved. He knew his people would not hold against the tides of terror that were about to dash against the warriors around him, and he was thankful that they were here. As soon as he got more than 20 yards away, the captain turned to his most trusted subordinate.
Has he gone?
Yes. I can understand his questions, as points. He's the leader of his people. Could you not have spared him more?
They will.
And with that, the work began. The next 6 days were a whirlwind, and the people looked on in awe. In the first day, armored men wearing blue and carrying staves walked every inch of the old fortress, stopping regularly and putting their hands on segments of walls, buttresses, and crenellations. The same men then went down to the areas outside of the fortress and began to walk around their edge, to clap their hands together and then slowly pull them apart. When they did this, huge chasms appeared in the ground, in a perfect set of 3 concentric circles, all around 20 feet deep and thrice as long. When this was done, huge construction vehicles began to drop in raw materials and chemicals, making a thick grey sludge. As more rock was gained with each passing hour, the blasting that occurred at the far end of the outcrop of hills that led to the back of the old fortress were almost constantly lit by explosions, and the entire valley echoed with those thunderous reports. Over the next days, the grey sludge was hardened again, and each load of blocks was then lifted by vehicles and directed into position by marines of varying armors, but all in the dazzling yellow of the imperial fists. Every single last marine worked tirelessly, indefatigably. They worked until the very last moment. And when they were done, only 6 days later, the old and dilapidated fort, the hard point between the continents, previously known as Conqueror's Ruin, had become a veritable Bastille. The only place that had not received a total transformation was the interior of the main sanctum of the Emperor, his holy church. All else was altered, made ready for the clangor of war. It was on day 5 that the Imperial fists had blown a local river bank, diverting the waters into channels made by the blue-clad marines, their librarians with their geokinesis abilities, and the 3 rings of moats were filled with water to slow the oncoming enemy. Walls 60 feet in height, 20 or more thick in its weakest places, a labyrinth of tunnels behind the walls, every corridor intersection point dotted with traps, murder holes, auto-sentries, hidden fire points, and blatant foe ones, and much, much more. When the skies on the horizon darkened with the smoke of a world burning, it was from deep within a veritable fortress that the Imperial fists and their chargers looked on. And so, the traitor Astartes had been burning their way toward the intersection, for ease of movement of the many tens of thousands of their newly converted scum. It took them 2 more days before their low-flying aircraft had dropped enough debased promethium on the woodlands between their main thrust and the waiting lines of Imperial fists. And another day for it then to cool enough for the onward rush of the horde. But onwards they did rush. And so it was the 3rd day after they were initially spotted that the forces of the traitors finally crested the horizon. And they did so in their tens of thousands. Evil had arrived at Conqueror's Ruin. Dear gentle listener, this is a slightly different style of video, and I shall outline its remit. I've constructed a narrative that should show, not tell, how the Imperial Fists act on the battlefield, and what sort of roles in which they excel. And we shall hear the most current information concerning their present position, their state of play and the setting, so to put it, how they are right now. If you wish to know more of their history, and the mighty sire of this legion and chapter, their progenitor, their primarch, then I refer you to my trilogy of videos concerning the Praetorian of Terror, the indefatigable clenched fist of the Emperor, Rogel Dawn. Earlier videos, but I am told they are still some of my best work to date. And from there, I intend to perform more in-depth looks at many of the chapters and legions, covering more of their history from the end of the Horus Heresy and the Scouring up to the present day of the 41st millennium and beyond. But details are changing in small shifts and large leaps in that period, as Black Library released more books covering the ages. So, all good things come to he who waits, eh? I shall get to them when I am happy I can give a good account of myself, for your entertainment and guidance. Returning to this video in specific, I will be interspersing tracts of lore with the continuation of my little tale, but always know it is a fan fiction only, an attempt to make the protagonists of the day more relatable, to see what they do and how they do it from my own bigger perspective. And so, let us continue on our journey of discovery into the events of my siege of Conqueror's Ruin, while we hear of this, one of the fractions at the command of Fist. The Imperium Shield. The Imperial Fists were the most. This is a burden the Imperial Fists bear with fortitude. They know that their Primarch, Rogel Dawn, would have expected nothing less. Such is the Primarch's inheritance, bluntness and hard-headedness, leavened by idealism and a passion for the dream of an Imperium restored. Like so many of his brother Primarchs, Rogel Dawn had seized a warrior's destiny long before his reunification with the Emperor. Adopted into the ruling families of the Inwit system, his talent for discipline and order had expanded that star-flung dominion's boundaries further than anyone had before. In Dawn resided the perfect balance of humours. He had a mind appreciative not just of metal and machinery, but also the flesh and blood that must wield such tools in matters of war. Furthermore, Dawn was possessed of a stalwart idealism that melded perfectly with the Emperor's Great Crusade, and equipped him well for leadership of the fledgling 7th Legion. The Imperial Fists soon became the Emperor's Praetorians, a duty they discharged with honour on worlds beyond count as the Great Crusade wore on. From the first, they proved masters of the bloody work of siegecraft. Under their Primarch's guidance, they rose and broke fortifications like no other force, safeguarding the nascent Imperium with an ever-expanding curtain wall of fortress worlds and deep space bastions. To Dawn's calculating eye, the Imperium was a fortress and terror its central citadel, and mankind's far-flung worlds were more than dominions to be reclaimed. They were vital ramparts in a growing whole that Dawn envisioned as the Bastion Imperialis, and owed service as readily as they were owed protection in return. As a result, few felt the betrayal of the Horus heresy more deeply than the brooding Rogel Dawn. Each word that plunged into rebellion cracked the foundation of the immortal fortress he had laboured to build. Though the Imperial its battle brothers divided amongst the Black Templars, Crimson Fists, and other successor chapters during the Second Founding, the chapter that bears its name maintains the duties and traditions of old.
Hi, Sam.
At the end of the scouring, the Imperial Fists observed what they saw as the rest of the Imperium giving up on the Emperor's dream of united mankind, and swore to continue the fight, alone if necessary. It is said that the Great Crusade never ended for them. Refusing to focus their efforts on simply preserving what remains of the Imperium, the Sons of Dawn have ever campaigned across the galaxy, prosecuting war against the enemies of mankind. The Pride of Dawn. It is held that the Imperial Fist's finest hour came during the siege of the Emperor's Palace, the fortifying of which Rogel Dawn had been pivotal in carrying out. In truth, however, the Imperial Fists have many times been vital to the Imperium's survival, though it is a point of honour amongst the Sons of Dawn that such victories are spoken of only out of need. Whilst the Sons of Dawn have never been afflicted with the same clandestine secrecy endemic to the Dark Angels, neither do they approve of the braggatism that permeates chapters such as the Space Wars. As individuals and as a chapter, the Imperial Fists seek purpose in the performance of great deeds, not the recounting of them. Thus, those who first encounter the Sons of Dawn often perceive them as somber and cheerless warriors. Those that know them better, not least their rivals in so many ways, the Ultramarines, recognize the passion that all Imperial Fists keep under tight rein. This continual mortification is necessary, for pride has ever been the Imperial Fist's greatest weakness. Pride is a powerful force. It can spur a warrior on to great deeds, even as those around lose all hope. It dredges fresh strength from the most debilitating of fugues, and brings forth the flame of victory from the embers of despair. Yet pride is a sword that cuts both ways, as a chapter is often found to its cost. Phalanx's Librarius contains many tales of the Imperial Fists who have died needlessly, driven to fight on when Chapter and Imperium would have been better served by warriors shamed but still alive. Squads, companies, and still greater proportions of the Chapter's strength have been known to perish in this manner. Such losses would have destroyed the Imperial Fists, but for a recruit reserve far deeper than that of most chapters, coupled with a stubborn determination that has ever seen the chapter cling to survival more than once. It is a source of pride that so long as one battle brother yet stands to hold the chapter banner high, the Sons of Dawn will never truly be defeated. Unlike many other chapters, the Primaries do not offer the Imperial Fist salvation, but rather an influx of ready warriors that took a flourishing chapter to unprecedented heights of martial achievement. In an attempt to counteract the chapter's destructive pride, the chaplains of the Imperial Fists preach credos intended to instill a more measured approach to war. Any defeat can be reversed, the chapter's neophytes are taught, provided that there are warriors yet alive to see the matter done. But these teachings are just balms to soothe the incurable. Stubbornness is as much a part of the Imperial Fist as their Primarch's gene seed, and it is a rare battle brother who can resist its lure forever. For an Imperial Fist, every battle is a test of will. Those who master their pride are able to embrace the strength it offers, but also have the wisdom to know when it tempts foolishness. Such Space Marines become heroes, but they can never truly escape the hubris of their blood. In the era Indomitus, the mission of the Imperial Fist grinds on. Dawn's designs for the Bastion Imperialis, abandoned in the wake of Horus's betrayal, have been taken up once more. Priority is given to securing the Imperium Sanctus. Those domains not sundered from terror by the Great Rift are also adamant that the Imperium Nihilis must not be abandoned. Scattered worlds that have not known the Emperor's rule in centuries are bound by fresh bonds of protection and fealty. Tyrants and warlords who deem themselves safe behind towering walls and adamantium redoubts are taught new and brutal lessons, that there is no fortress the Imperial Fist cannot cast down, no shelter to be found amongst the rubble, no weakness too small for the Sons of Dawn to exploit, and nowhere to hide from their vengeance. Gilliman's launch of the Indomitus Crusade is seen by many of the Imperial Fists as proof of a truth long held, that the galaxy would be a very different place had Dawn and not Gulliman crafted the fate of the broken Imperium in the heresy's wake. Though Dawn eventually embraced the principles of the Codex Astartes and broke his beloved legion into lesser chapters, he did so not out of desire, but out of necessity. That the Codex still holds sway over the Imperial Fist some 10,000 years on is testament to their characteristic refusal to abandon any challenge once embraced. To the Imperial Fist, the tempered aggression of the Indomitus Crusade feels more like the strategy of vanished Dawn than reboot Gilliman. They are not the only ones to believe that the crusading Lord Commander of today is in many ways a different man to the Primarch of yore. But unlike most who share this perspective, the Sons of Dawn wholeheartedly approve of the change, taking it as confirmation that Dawn's precepts are in ascendance once more. Whoever issues the orders. The forces of evil crested the horizon, and their advance was steady but swift, terrifyingly swift. The forward ranks practically pushing each other aside, scrambling across and against each other to be the first to the walls. It was not the main force, oh no. That was made up of rigorously trained and still hardened warriors who knew the benefit of discipline, sometimes only out of fear of what their superiors in the chain of command would do to them, but it was discipline no matter the reason for it. As the carnival-like swarm of chaos piled forever onwards, most of its number was held around the main thrust, dark apostles screaming vileness and degradations into the heavens, but keeping the majority of their rabble in check, holding them back. The main force of Marines, their Land Raiders, Whirlwinds, Rhinos, and other vehicles all approached to only a safe distance, out of the usual range for defensive fire before coming to a stop. Hence it was only the most frothingly deranged that made their headlong dash towards the fortress, a small fraction of the main force, but an important beginning to the siege. And it was in this first contact that much of the pace and tempo the battle would be set. For siege warfare was as much a matter of morale and momentum as it was of method. Hence were the Imperial fists out on the walls in great numbers, the dawn light reflecting off their yellow armor, making them seem like spectral statues of light, instead of the barely contained Emperor's wrath that made not one move, not one fidget, scuff, or stretch. They simply looked down from the battlements, from their fire points, utterly motionless, and with a steely determination that would have broken all but the most insane before ere they approached those fell walls. But these insane, twisted hordes just gurgled and screamed as they charged headlong towards the lines.
All right, you know the drill. We wipe this probing assault off the field in short order. And gentlemen, if one of those scums hit the moats, there will be unpleasantly candid write-ups involved. Let's get this done. The Rogel Dawn.
Squad's ready. We can't have these whippersnappers outdo us here, brothers. I expect your best. I expect it to be better than theirs.
Thousands of cultists ran forward, but when they reached a certain point, they began to explode. At first, it was only the pinpoint accuracy of the slightly longer ranged and more heavily impacting rounds of the bolt rifles of the intercessors that found their mark. But as the screaming crowd moved forward, the hail fire increased as the bolters of the Astartes of the tactical squads matched the rate of fire of the rifles. But be it rifles or bolters, the fire was unerringly accurate. Each bolt hit first time every time. Some were so accurately placed as to play one target and another, sometimes multiple. The rain of fire was lightning quick, and each of the men. They fired and put the next target in their sights, fired again without pause, without hesitation. New magazines were slapped in.
Sorry, Sam. I hope everything calms down for you. And hello to Sam.
To the bolt weapons almost in unison across the lines, as a blizzard of bolt shots kept flying unrelentingly. And the result was foregone. As the firing from the walls finally ended, there was a good 20 yards remaining before the beginning of the carpet of dead and the furthest edge of the outer moats. Many still twitched and moaned, but none actually moved forwards. None.
First wave broken. No contact made with Objective 1, as instructed. Understood. Men, initiate goading patterns 2 through 6. Slander at will.
With that, the stoic and disciplined Astartes of the Imperial Fists then began to use tried and tested taunts and signals designed by body language and psychology experts. It was utterly professional and utterly without mirth or without pride. They were siege experts. They knew the drill better perhaps than any in the galaxy, and the riling of the enemy, the hit to his morale, would be all too important. Of course, the optimal result would have been an immediate reaction from the hordes, another mad dash at their guns on fortifications before they could be organized or ordered, and it would lead to an almost exact repeat of the last 10 minutes of action. Alas, despite it working to inflame the passions of the hordes, their dark apostles screeched at them and halted them, executing any who broke ranks to move forward. The first engagement had gone as planned, the enemy bloodied and broken. Forced to consider that they could not just roll over the walls at a whim, it began the puncturing of the confidence of the enemy. It shook their cultists more than it ever would the Astartes in their center, but they would have their own secret fears, their own confidence crusher. For these Astartes, these traitors, they knew the reputation of the Imperial Fists, and, being a chapter of only a few centuries of existence, could not help themselves. There was more than just a little awe in play. Awe of the loyalists that would slowly eat at the traitors as things dragged on. They would need a swift victory, or would have none at all. They would have days, not weeks or months. For the traitors, it would have to be done in days. And so it was time for the serious business of a siege. And with the clock against the traitors, it would be a bloody one. The rest of that day witnessed the filling of the air with shot and explosives, while both sides went about attempting to pound the other into submission. The siege forces were difficult to spot, due to their artillery being in the rear of their forces. But somehow the Imperial Fists kept hitting them, no matter how often they repositioned. Despite this, the fire from the sieging army was not to be underestimated, and soon enough huge rents began to appear all over the fortress, done in the most secure area, the most reinforced, being the walls, but structures behind were soon toppling over. But this again was as planned. The Imperial Fist has designed their defenses not only with optimal lines of ingress to control, but also with the mentality of their aggressor in mind. They purposefully left up fragile spires and towers, which made for intensely satisfying sights when the sieging army's shot hit them. Alas, for all of the spectacle, the bombardment did nothing to the structures the Imperial Fists had made, nor the central building where all of the civilians were being held. It looked good, but achieved absolutely zero. But while it was looking good, it permitted the hidden or hard-bunkered batteries of the Imperial Fists to lay waste to the aggressor's artillery. The accuracy was simply unerring. The traitors soon realized that they could not win in a slugging match, not against the Imperial Fists. So after only one day, and most of one night, the Chaos Forces prepared their next waves for a dawn assault. Before the sun's red light had properly touched the clouds, the hordes moved again. But not all of them. The traitors may have turned to evil, but they had not lost all of their wits. The second wave charged headlong towards the moat and walls at the speed of the previous day, but they were doubled in their number, if not more. As they charged, some elements of the traitors snuck into range and fired directly at the walls, in an attempt to cut down as many Imperial Fists as they could. But they were at long range, and were not sons of Rogel Dawn. They took scalps, but very few.
All right, change of tack. Volley fire, slow them. Then on my word, we will shift to firing at their back ranks. We need them bundled up in and around the moat. Let's put the fear of the Emperor into these scum.
Marines, prepare for volley fire.
The cultists underwent the same deluge of controlled but lethally accurate fire as did their predecessors. But so many charged forward that they simply trampled the fallen into a bloody mess in their rage and wish to get to the walls. Yet the volley fire meant ranks of them went down all in one, and so it did indeed slow the onrushing beast. As each time the thunder of the perfectly aligned volley fire hit their ranks, they were pushed back upon themselves, and it slowed them, but did not stop them. And soon they were at the moats. 3 wide moats, each being at least 20 foot wide and deep. Then there was a small line of solid earth, like a thin island between the next moat. This meant that they would swim across, then pull themselves out of the water twice before getting even close to the last approach to the walls themselves. As they rose out of the water each time, they were picked off in lines, those being hit falling backwards on those following them. Soon the moats were so cluttered with the dead that it was nigh on impossible to move forward at any speed. Under the rigorous volleys of the Imperial Fists, they lost thousands. tens of thousands. But eventually, inexorably, they did begin to move forward by sheer weight of numbers.
Now, shift three-quarter fire on their back ranks. Maintain volley fire. Remaining quarter secure the grounds before our walls.
As the orders came down from the lieutenant to his sergeants, Gerhard Halsor, the senior tactical marine sergeant, made sure that their execution would be perfect.
All right, men. 2 to 5, continue firing down. I don't want one of those filth to put a pole on our outer walls. The rest of you, fire!
Now that those who milled on the other side of the moats were the targets, the cultists now frantically pushed forward even more, to be in the comparative safety of the waters. Attempting to push through floating masses of lifeless, floating corpses as they were, bundled together in their thousands, they did not stand a chance when the next order was given. As the order came down, each of the Imperial fists of the walls crouched into cover. Massive explosive charges inside the separated areas of landmass between the moats were then primed and detonated. Each landmass exploded upwards and outwards, covering the entire area in mud, shrapnel, and fire. Those inside the water were smashed to oblivion by the force that was carried through it. Those above the moat were torn to shreds by the explosives or burnt to a crisp in the firestorm that erupted. Hundreds of tons of blood, mud, and body parts was then deposited across the entire approach to the citadel. It literally rained cultist parts on those masses held back for subsequent waves. Only punctuated by the falling fragments of water, mud, and bodies, the silence that issued from the chaos ranks was thunderous. No further attack happened that day. Chapter Organization. The Imperial Fists follow the logistic teachings of the Codex Astartes, the treatise written by Robert Gilliman to curtail the power of the old legions. Though the Imperial Fists were more hesitant than other legions to adopt the Codex, its wisdom came to be accepted and has helped to guide the Sons of Dawn to countless victories. Rogel Dawn rejected the teachings of the Codex Astartes at first, embittered by the long wars of the Horus Heresy and the merciless scouring that followed. He resented that Gilliman, who had fought only peripheral campaigns, while Dawn had stood in defense of the Emperor's palace itself, now dared to dictate matters of war and duty to the Imperial Fists. Dawn remained intractable, yielding only when another round of costly civil war seemed inevitable. Recognizing the ruinous path his pride had charted, he agreed to respect the principles of the Codex Astartes. Henceforth, the Imperial Fists would be a legion no longer, but one to the Codex Astartes to suit their individual needs. The Imperial had no such alterations. Once committed to Gilliman's precepts, they remained so without deviation. This was in no small part due to the fact that the most fiercely independent warriors of the Old Legion were excised into the Black Templars during the Second Founding. Those who remained were determined to master the tenets of the Codex Astartes and prove themselves the equals, or indeed the superiors, of the Ultramarines, even in the application of Gilliman's doctrines. As a result, aside from a few organizational quirks centered around accommodating phalanx into chapter hierarchy, the Imperial Fists are supremely Codex adherent. The first company consists of hardened warriors promoted from elsewhere in the chapter, and it is rightly famed for its precision Terminator assaults. It is uncommon for First Company Battle Brothers to take the field as a single formation, however. Instead, they usually deploy in small numbers to form the granite core of a strike force. The second through fifth companies are the battle companies, carefully balanced to ensure a versatile response to any threat a war zone might present, each as a self-contained army in its own right, more than capable of bringing a campaign to a successful conclusion with a combination of overwhelming fire.
Well, that picture is finished. I have a fun one I was fixing to do, which would be this one. But what you are listening to is Imperial Fist, narrated by Baltimore's Guide to 40K. This guy is amazing. If you haven't already, you should go and subscribe because he is absolutely outstanding. I really enjoy his content a lot. But anyway, anyway,
and furious close-quarters assault. While the Codex Astartes specifies the ratios of battle line, close support and fire support squads, it is considerably less precise concerning the specialized war gear these units should draw from the armory. Accordingly, Imperial Fist's battle companies make prodigious use of Centurion warsuits and Gravis armor, greatly increasing each company's firepower. The 6th through 9th companies serve as the Imperial Fist reserve companies. These are primarily concerned with supporting the battle companies during deployments, either by providing additional punch to a particular discipline of warfare, or by filling gaps opened up by casualties. The reserve companies seldom shoulder the burden of a war zone without support from elsewhere in the chapter, but each is more than capable of doing so should need arise. Indeed, Chapter Command encourages such deployments when suitable, seeing them as excellent training opportunities. More than any chapter, the Imperial Fist considered battle distinct from drill only in the higher level of bloodshed anticipated. The 10th Company is a scout company, responsible not only for tutoring neophytes in the chapter's ways of war, but also for maintaining a corps of experienced vanguard squads. Vigorously trained by experienced veterans of the chapter, the neophytes who fight as scouts come to understand both their craft and their chapter. Those neophytes that make it this far have already survived the rigors of the initial selection process, but their true training has barely begun. The Initiate's Path. The Codex Astartes holds that a Battle Brother's journey should be a linear one, beginning in the Scout Company and passing in turn through the Reserve Companies to hone their skills. In most Codex chapters, this means that a Battle Brother who earns elevation from the Scout Company will progress in precisely that order, first battling the foe from a distance in the 9th Company, then eye to eye in the 8th Company, but finally harnessing both lessons in perfect balance in the reserve battle companies of the 7th and 6th. Only then are they deemed worthy of a posting to one of the chapter's battle companies. However, the Codex Astartes does not specify the precise order of transition, a fact of which the Imperial Fists take full advantage. Thus, most graduates of the Imperial Fist's 10th Company are elevated first to the 8th Company, where they are encouraged to purge themselves of any impetuousness through the fury of close assault, the better they might come to know the discipline expected of an Imperial Fist. Cleansed of distracting humours, they then progress to the 9th Company, where a more settled soul makes for a smoother grasp of the precision fire doctrines for which the chapter is renowned. From there, they pass through the reserve battle line companies as normal, but the focus on precision fire remains such that by the time a battle brother enters one of the chapter's battle companies, there are few warriors in the galaxy more accomplished in delivering death to those who shelter behind walls or within bunker complexes. Nearing noon, the Elderman, alone as usual, picked his way through the debris and trudged down corridors that were not there 10 days ago. He had but one sanctioned route, so did not get lost in the maze of fortifications, also because he was flanked by 2 of the Marines of the squad that had been stationed within the main building, so as to protect the populace in the case of an unexpected teleportation or warp-spawned apparition in their midst. The Imperial Fists were well versed in the depths to which the worshippers of the dark gods of corruption would stoop. Thus the Elderman was sandwiched between the 2 walking tanks, Goliath to his aged David. But the Elderman was under no illusions that anything he could do would bring either of them low, no matter the circumstances. They escorted him up to the battlements for his daily 2-minute discourse with Lieutenant Nereus Markov.
Good morning, Elderman. Your questions?
Does it go well?
Yes.
Do you think I can tell my people it goes well?
Yes.
Where we live?
Emperor willing. It is looking likely.
Am I allowed to ask a question that has more than a one-word answer?
With me, yes, but be direct. I cannot increase your allocated time slot.
Why do the enemy send their men in waves, like shoals of fish? They outnumber you 100 to 1. It makes no sense. Why not charge with all at once?
Because they are trained warriors. Too many men on the field will constrain their actions, will confuse their orders, will obfuscate the real ebb and flow of the battle, will prevent them counting our guns, will lead to a mass rout and the end of the battle in one day if their men break. In one statement, it gives them control. Siege warfare is about patience and will. They are on a fixed schedule, as our battle barges chasing their small fleet around the system, so they do not have patience. They send in their chaff, their cultists, to tire out our men and waste our resources before sending in their main combat units. Now it is up to will. Who will tire first? Who will bleed first? Who will break first? Basically, who will be the last to fall? Your time is now up. Please retreat to the rear. Until tomorrow, Elderman.
Thank you for your time, Lieutenant, and all of your protection. The 10th Company, the Eyes of Dawn. Firepower toward dawn is worthless without eyes to guide it. Such is the mission of the 10th Company, to identify weaknesses in the enemy position and relay them to the chapter's fire support elements. The task is a dangerous one, often requiring warriors to advance far beyond the possibility of extraction. As such, it is the first true test of a neophyte's ability. Under the Codex Astartes, the 10th Company's dual function is to continuously provide training for those who would become full Space Marines, and to maintain 10 squads of experienced Vanguard Squad Marines. The precise manner by which this is handled varies from chapter to chapter, but in the Imperial Fists, the 10th Company are required to get close to the foe, sometimes closer than other elements within a strike force. This is especially true of the Vanguard squads, whose more aggressive mission often brings them eye to eye with the enemy. While vulnerability can be discerned from afar, the Imperial Fist's precision warfare requires a closer, more personal examination, which often reveals weaknesses that a more distant analysis might miss. Thus the Eyes of Dawn employ their infiltration skills to observe and report. They overcome boundary patrols and sentries in bursts of merciless endeavor, slipping beneath the brittle shell of the enemy's perimeter to identify targets ripe for exploitation. Among the company's neophytes, only the most senior are trusted with heavy weapons for engaging the enemy at range. A battle brother of the Imperial Fists must earn the right to harness the armory's fury, and by their very nature, scouts are amongst the least tested of the chapter's warriors. When the chapter employs its armored formations, the warriors of the 10th are expected to act as its outriders, racing forward upon bikes and land speeders to outpace the main advance. Once again, their primary task is to gather reconnaissance data in anticipation of the chapter's main assault. But it is a rare captain of the 10th Company who is content to limit his charges to such peripheral engagements. After all, a Space Marine is forged in war. Before rising from the ranks of the 10th Company, a neophyte will have an impressive tally of kills to his name, possessing a roster of battle honors that eclipses all but the most hardened veterans of the Astra Militarum, as well as a number of hard-won wounds demonstrating his courage. It is a testament to the incredible capabilities, standards, and resolve of the Imperial Fists that such neophytes are among the chapter's least blooded and experienced. Legacy of Dawn. Each strain of the Astartes gene seed is different to the next, its post-human potential determined by failing sequences or the unquantifiable genetic variations at the Primarch to which its existence is owed. In some cases, notably the space wolves and salamanders, these changes manifest as profound mutation, but other differences are less pronounced. In the case of the Imperial Fists, imperfections of gene seed have robbed them of the Suzanne membrane that allows a Space Marine to enter a state of suspended animation, nor do they possess a Betcher's gland, which enables an Astartes to spit poison at his foe. Naturally, the Imperial Fists mourn neither loss. Indeed, Chapter Luminary Rhetoricus was known to proclaim that such abilities are mere crutches for less accomplished warriors. The Ninth Company, the Wardens. Imperial Fist recruits prove themselves as Astartes in the 10th Company, purge their recklessness in the 8th Company, and learn discipline worthy of Dawn during their time in the 6th and 7th. But it is in the 9th Company that a battle brother truly becomes an Imperial Fist, for it is here that he learns the chapter's central tenet, that firepower triumphs over all. To witness the 9th Company at their bloody work is to see war unfold as Dawn would have wished. It is to watch the creeping advance of fire support squads, their fury reinforced by formidable battle tanks and artillery as the chapter's revered dreadnoughts look on. The ground trembles and the sky screams as positions are scythed clear of foes, ramparts toppled, and bastions broken beneath an overwhelming torrent of fire. Though Dawn ever acknowledged that the prosecution of war was a council of many voices, the roar of big guns resonated in his soul even to the day of his disappearance. The Imperial Fist 9th Company serves as the chapter's senior reserve company, giving all battle brothers a vital grounding in the brutal arts of siege breaking. But the 9th also functions as an unofficial 5th battle company, more often forming a strike forces corps than dividing its brothers across manifold battle zones. Even in an age where heretics and Xenos have grown bolder in the face of what they perceive as a weakened and vulnerable Imperium, campaigns untold are still effectively ended when Chapter Master Decian utters 4 simple words: send in the 9th. Captain Cahiron has commanded the 9th Company for more than 3 centuries, gaining a reputation as a disciplinarian that has come to eclipse all other officers in the chapter. Employment of the paying glove is more common within the 9th than in any other company, and Cahiron has at his disposal many other relics of chastisement besides, some of which even the chaplains refuse to endorse. Whatever his methods, under Cahiron's watch, the 9th Company has become more formidable than ever, and when the 9th rises in power, so too does the chapter as a whole, as the Wardens of today will fill the ranks of tomorrow's battle companies. In matters of traditional besieging, the Wardens prioritize combat from static positions, obliterating defenses from fortified vantage points. Should such emplacements be absent, brothers of the 6th Company are often called in to oversee their construction. For this reason, the 6th and 9th commonly deploy together, the one to fashion a strong point from which the other can pummel the hapless foe. When it is not a sole fortress that must be humbled, but rather a sprawling domain, the 9th Company perforce fights on the move, requisitioning transports and battle tanks from the chapter's armory. Predators, Vindicators, Land Raiders, and Repulsor Executioners spearhead the advance, cleansing the field with merciless fire, while fire support squads prepare to break the enemy's resistance once and for all. Like Dawn, the Wardens prefer fighting across blasted ground than through turbulent skies. But when the mission calls for it, they deploy gunships in pursuit of specific objectives, utilizing their aircraft with all the discipline and skill for which the Sons of Dawn are known. Yet patience is perhaps the 9th Company's chief weapon, more cherished than any asset to be found in the chapter's armory. The timing of the shot, after all, matters just as much as its placement, lest a glimmer of exposed weakness be lost behind restored shields, or the firer be cheated of his kill by the battle's flow. Thus it is not unknown for the 9th Company's positions to go utterly silent for extended periods, only to erupt with uncompromising fury when the opportune moment arrives. Such judicious restraint by the Wardens has been the salvation of many Imperial worlds, and doubtless many more to come. The 8th Company, Dawn's Huskarls. There is one company where the Imperial Fist's otherwise immutable tenets of discipline give ground to more aggressive, impulsive strategies, grudgingly excused as necessary for the purging of youth and inexperience. As wild as these impulses appear to the Imperial Fists, to outsiders, the Eighth appear only marginally less stiff-necked than the rest of the chapter. To trace the origins of the Eighth Company's unusually impulsive behavior, one must delve back in time to the era known as the War of the Beast, and to the rebuilding of the chapter thereafter. To all outside the Imperial Fist, this event is unknown, but within the chapter, it is a story told still. At a time of incredible peril, after immense sacrifice, the Imperial Fist were on the brink of extinction. In response, though sprung from the same stock as the Imperial Fist, the Black Templars were ever hotter-blooded than other Sons of Dawn. The doctrines Elderic laid down reflected this, focusing on headlong assaults over the balanced coast.
Well, guys, we have made it halfway through Imperial Fists by Baltimore's Guide to 40K. And we've been doing this for nearly an hour. This will be a short one. I will be doing the other half of this video tomorrow, likely around 2:30 or 3 in the afternoon versus late at night. This was kind of a pop-up random stream that I didn't intend on doing, but figured why not. So tomorrow we will finish this and likely finish the Space Wolf saga. I hope you have all enjoyed this time, and I will see you again tomorrow.